Hey everybody, this is Tracy here with another edition of A View from Tracy's Point, and we are here to talk about DMX's celebration of life that took place yesterday. It actually turned out to be a really beautiful homegoing service for the rapper who you guys know passed away a couple of weeks ago after suffering a massive heart attack. And the service was supposed to begin at 4 p.m. There was a notice that went out for Black America Web saying that the service was going to be broadcast live from there, but it was actually broadcast on YouTube. And so they were trying to get the word out because it didn't seem like it was publicized that well. And so they were getting people to help them share the word and let people know how to get to the live stream. And so we get over there at 4 o'clock, and the service was 2 hours and 45 minutes late. People were getting frustrated, and then we started seeing on Instagram and Twitter these videos showing the casket being transported, in this big truck, one of those trucks where they have the hydraulics on it and it's really high up, and it was driving through parts of New York. And so we were like, okay, was this footage taken earlier, or was this footage live? Like, when did this happen? Why is it taking so long for this service to start? And so what's really nice, I thought that they did do the little drive-through, and it reminded me from, growing up, well, not growing up, but spending my summers in the country. And that's kind of how they do the whole country funeral thing. But it's usually after the service where they'll drive through the city and pass by all the places, that were special and dear to the deceased en route to the cemetery. And that's kind of what it reminded me of when I saw the truck and then all the motorcycles and the all-terrain vehicles following this big truck. And so I thought that was a really nice send-off, something that most people don't get to do, but considering who DMX was, it was definitely fitting for him. And at the peak of the service, once it actually started around 6:20, 6:25, there were about 210,000 people that were watching. The numbers kept going up and down. I believe at 4 o'clock there was only like 80,000 people, and we were thinking, okay, they are trying to wait until more people come in. And then it was 5 o'clock, and then it was 6 o'clock, and they kept changing the time and changing the time. And so they finally did start the service. And then we learned that it was Kanye's Sunday service that was performing, that was going to be the choir of the day. And then I was like, okay, well, that's why they were late, because y'all know Kanye would show up an hour, 2 hours late somewhere. So I was like, let me find out that Kanye held this service up trying to get from Wyoming to New York. And although we didn't hear from Kanye personally during any of the songs that were performed by the Sunday service choir, I do believe Kanye was up there on that stage. They kept putting the camera on someone that looked like Kanye, and I can't believe that Kanye would not have come to the service. But, did we get an introduction of Kanye? Did he speak? No, he didn't. But I do believe that he was there amongst them. But in any event, we never did learn why the service was so late. But it lasted about an hour and 25 minutes. And although there were hundreds of fans in the parking lot at the Barclay Center where the service was held, the service was actually closed to the public, and it was attended by, of course, family, close friends, people from the music industry, and then the members of the Rough Riders motorcycle club. It was very personal, I thought. And what I also liked about the funeral that probably bothered, the Christian community, is that they didn't really have a eulogy. There wasn't a preacher there who got up and spoke for about 15-20 minutes about a person that he really didn't know. And I know we all have been to funerals where we know that the person didn't go to church, but the preacher got up there and preached a really good message, knowing that this person wasn't a member of their church. And then we've been to services where people were members of the church, but they weren't active in the church. And so you knew that the preacher didn't know the person, but they were able to give this sermon because they loved the mother or whatever. And so I was kind of happy that if he didn't have a church that he was connected to, didn't have a pastor, or that the family recognized that that wasn't the type of service that they wanted, that they, were able to get people to come and speak on his life who really knew him as a person and could share the essence of who he was. And then we really don't know if there was a private, I haven't heard anything about a private service taking place, so they very well could have had a traditional private service. And so the color theme seemed to be red and white. The casket was red. They had red lights. I couldn't tell if the choir members, if the Sunday service group were wearing red or if it just made it look red because they had the red light shining on them. But you guys can see in the images that it just gave that essence of red. And of course, red was probably his favorite color, and that's why they chose red. But you had the people on social media who were complaining about the color and saying it was demonic and why would they do that. And the best way to figure out why they did it was to ask the family, right? But I'm going to think that red was probably one of his favorite colors. And so, as I mentioned, Kanye's Sunday service, they were the musical portion of the service, and they performed throughout the entire service. And I believe that they were more prominent than any of the speakers because they would do like 1 or 2 selections. Someone would speak. They do 1 or 2 more selections. Somebody else would speak. And when they opened up, I believe, with 4 selections, 2 of which were Keep On Moving and Excellent. Then the family took the stage and they came up, and Tashera, who is the first wife, her and Desiree, who was the fiance, they got up and they were the main speakers, and then they had all the kids with them. And Tashera, she just has that presence, like, she has that business-minded presence that, she's going to say what needs to be said. She gave the microphone to Desiree, and you can tell that Desiree is just devastated, as she should be and as any normal person would be. Then they passed the microphone to the kids, and so I'm thinking it must have been like maybe one of his older sons who spoke first. Oh, and back to Tashera. Some of the points that she made in her message was, everything that he did for his fans, that Earl wouldn't change places if he had the opportunity to come back and be amongst the living, that his goal was that he wants us to carry the love of Jesus the way that he did, that his children were his pride and joy and everything in his life, and that all he ever wanted was for all his children and their mothers to come together on one accord. And unfortunately, it was his passing that created this bond that they now share. His son, Xavier, was the first one to get up and speak, and I thought that was fitting because if you guys remember when DMX was on Iyanla Vanzant's show, Fix My Life, he was there because his son, Xavier, was trying to build a relationship with him. And he said that his father is a king and an icon, and that he was so honored to have a father like DMX, that they all had and were able to share. And that, DMX taught him to be kind to everyone. And then the next son to speak was his son by the name of Manny. They had audio issues, so we missed, the first portion of what he was saying. But when the audio came back, he said, he was the best father or the best dad ever. And then he had written a poem, but once again, the audio was breaking up. But it was a poem about his dad passing. And, then he asked everybody to put the X up. And, of course, people, that's when you hold your hands up and you cross them. Then one of his young daughters spoke, and she used one of DMX's songs, and I meant to go back and get the name of the song, but if you hear her, you'll know what song it is. And basically the hook was, so basically she was talking about what a great dad he was, and how she was sad, but then she had to realize that her dad would want her to be strong. And so in the hook, she goes, I'm growing, I'm learning to hold my head up. My dad is still holding my hand. So I got to get up. I got to stand up. And so she repeated that several times. And I couldn't tell if she was reading from a teleprompter or if she was reciting this from memory, because it was very long. It was a very long rap. And she held her own, and she did a phenomenal job with that. And so then the Sunday service choir performed again, and they did Sunshine and Yes, Jesus Loves Me. And it was actually Whitney Houston singing Yes, Jesus Loves Me, and then they were accompanying her with some lyrics that they had added on, and I thought that was very special. But once again, the people in the comments was like, why is they using Whitney Houston? She dead. And I was like, oh my God, people, get it together. So then the next speaker was Nas, and he came up and he was sharing his experience of getting to know DMX while working on the movie Belly. Then next they played the prayer from the 2019 Coachella Easter service. And you guys know in my previous videos, I talked about how DMX had just been released either from rehab or from jail. I can't remember which one it was. I believe it was rehab, and Kanye invited him to come and say a prayer at Coachella, and so they played that. Then the Sunday service choir performed again, and they did a medley of songs, and the one that I love so much that I don't know the title to, but it's either Saved, it's a God thing, or The Risen Lord, one of those names, but it's a really nice song and compilation that they put together with that. And then the next people to speak were the original Rough Riders, and then they brought up Eve, The Lox, and Swizz Beatz, and Jadakiss also spoke. And so the original speaker, he came up and he said that the family that walks together stays together, and he talked about how they had over 300 writers from all chapters to show up for this service, and that once a month they are going to start to come together and create that unity and be a support system for one another. So then Eve spoke, and she said that I'm the luckiest woman in the world to have been adopted by the Rough Riders, but also to have known a man and father and friend as DMX, and I pray to our ancestors that his journey was a smooth transition. Then Dragon got up and he said, I don't exist without this man. He taught me everything I know. He found me in the gutter. The air I breathe is the air I breathe in this industry. And he, I think, was the most visibly shaken. And I hope they, wrap their arms around him and check up on him, because he said more than one time that the only reason he was alive or exists today is because of DMX, and that he doesn't know what he's going to do, and he's lost in this moment. So, we need to keep our prayers up for him. Then Jadakiss spoke, and he says, basically that he wasn't good at, public speaking and speaking at somebody's funeral. He says that he's a much different dog than the one we know in the streets, referring to DMX, that he can never repay him, and that he's seen him in two phases. The happiest that he had seen him in the last few years, and had ever seen him as happy as he was, leading up to his passing. And then Stylz got up and he says that DMX always celebrated and pushed him up, was always in pain, but was built of love, that he was a beast, and that even though he was hurting inside, he always exuded happiness and a willingness to help other people. And he said that he invented our way of life, And then somebody reminded him that he met DMX while he was in county lockup. And so he began to tell that story, saying that DMX came to him and asked him if he was ready, to showcase his talent. And then DMX took him to a part of the jail that he didn't even know existed, and said that there was a band set up and he had about 20 MCs. And then they, I guess, had like a rap battle in the jail, which I thought, okay, well, that was interesting. And then Swizz Beatz got up and he pretty much said what was on his mind and put everything in perspective. And he says that he wished that all the people that had shown up in DMX's passing, were there for him when he was alive and he was suffering and he was struggling. And he said that we got to learn how to celebrate each other when we are here. Don't show up for me when I'm gone. So he was letting people know, if you're not in my life now, you're not celebrating my happiness, not holding me down, when things aren't going great, don't show up at my funeral with all this fake love. And he says that this whole situation has shown him a lot. He says that everybody needs to do a will, alluding to the fact that DMX may not have had a will. A lot of people are not your friends and not your family. Get a will because you don't want bloodsuckers handling your affairs. And then he says, but it doesn't matter, what anybody is doing, that he is personally going to make sure that DMX's family and his kids are straight and taken care of. And then he ended his message by yelling, "Stop." And then the audience, they recited the rest. They played DMX's "What's My Name," the Rough Riders anthem as they were leaving off of the stage. And then the Sunday service choir, they started playing like a melody, and then the head guy recited some type of prayer. And then there was a harmonizing outro, and we realized that the service was over. It had come to an end. And I thought it was really interesting because I know a lot of people were waiting on the benediction. Once again, the church folks was probably like, how you just end the service like that? Why we didn't get a benediction? But it reminded me of my former pastor on the Communion Sunday. He would always get up and walk to the back of the church, and then he would say that, on Mount, whatever mount it was, Mount Calvary or Mount Carmel, or that there was no benediction, that the people just went out of the church. And it reminded me of that. And so that was the service, you guys. If you watched it, let me know what you thought about it. I thought it was beautiful. I thought that having Kanye and the Sunday service there kind of just brought it all together. And despite how we felt by the lateness of the service started, once we saw them up on the stage, I think everybody forgot about the 2+ hour wait and was in the spirit immediately. We're in the mood immediately to celebrate DMX's life. So go ahead, leave your comments below, rate the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And until the next time, I shall talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.